everybody, and welcome to my channel. I'm Nadia, and this is Patience and Patience, where I talk about motherhood, nursing, being the wife of a medical resident, life, and basically anything else that I want to talk about. In today's video, I am going to be sharing my top 10 tips on how to date your medical student. Whether he's your boyfriend or your husband, I have 10 surefire tips to help you navigate through this difficult time in your relationship. Now, when a lot of the doctors that I worked with or a lot of my friends found out that I was marrying this guy who wanted to be a doctor, or that I was married to somebody in medical school, I always got a lot of feedback that goes along the lines of, wow, that must be really hard. Oh, how are you holding up? Or one doctor even told me, like, you're really lucky that you're married to him, because if you guys were just dating, this probably isn't going to last very long. And so it kind of got me into like thinking, like, why are people so negative about this relationship? And then I was like thrown into like the lion's den basically once he started medical school, and I saw why. If you're dating somebody who is in medical school, or if your husband is in medical school, or you're in a relationship or engaged to somebody that's in medical school, first and foremost, you have my deepest sympathies. For anybody that's watching this video who is maybe thinking about marrying somebody or thinking about getting into a relationship with somebody who is in medical school, I just want to warn you ahead of time before you even take that step or that jump into the relationship. Being with somebody who is a medical student is not for the faint of heart. If you are somebody that constantly needs like your significant other at your side, or you constantly need somebody with you all the time, or you are just like, just somebody who's accustomed to having, company around, or having people around you that, or a significant other around you, then perhaps this isn't the right relationship for you just yet. But go ahead and watch the video and, watch along and see my 10 tips and maybe see if it's going to work for you. So without chatting your ear off and carrying off on tangents and things like that, I'm going to go ahead and start. My number one tip for being with a medical student or being in a relationship with a medical student is do not be greedy. What I mean by that is, we obviously know people in medical school are very, very busy. But they're busy in a different way of being busy. A medical student is required to study very long hours, just like any other student. But the difference is what they are studying could potentially kill somebody or potentially save somebody. And so the importance of what they are learning is very, very high. And so medical students really, like, they're constantly studying, they're constantly reading, constantly researching. My husband was always at school. He was always like in a lab practicing his skills, or going to other like organizational like events and things like that where they taught him different skills and stuff like suturing or intubating and things like that. And so he was always utilizing his free time to do more studying. And so just don't be greedy. Like, if your spouse or your boyfriend is telling you, or girlfriend is telling you that, you know what, I have 10 minutes of allotted time, I want to spend this 10 minutes with you, let's just do something really quickly. Don't be greedy and ask for an hour. Number two, meet them at school for like a lunch break or a dinner break or a snack break or something like that. So this is something I didn't actually get to do a lot of, because when my husband was in medical school, I was working full-time as an ICU nurse. For the first 2 years of medical school, I was working the night shift, and that was just really difficult. And on top of that, like, I had 2 children in the time of his medical school journey. And so I was busy with the children, I was busy with my job, I was catching up on my own sleep. And so I didn't get to really utilize this tip as much as I probably would have hoped to. But on the days that I did, like, honestly, like, it was refreshing to me. Like, everybody has to take a lunch break at some point. Sure, your medical student might not be able to take a lunch break every single day with you, but sometimes like their workload is going to be a little bit lighter than what it usually is. And on those days, you should utilize that time and be like, hey babe, I want to come meet you at school for lunch. Go ahead and pack like a simple sack lunch, like a turkey sandwich and a bag of chips or something, and join them for lunch. Number 3, you want to join them for a campus activity that they themselves enjoy. So in the beginning of medical school for my husband's program, they had this like club day, where all the clubs, basically like any university, all the clubs get together, they showcase like the things that they stand for, and they try to like advertise their organization and get people to join their group basically. And so it's really nice. Like they have like popcorn and barbecue and food and things like that, and games and stuff. And of course I wasn't gonna join any of those clubs, obviously, but it was just a way for me to like join my husband doing something, you know, on campus with his friends and things like that. He also was part of the campus choir, or the med school choir, I guess, where they would get together and they would, you know, practice their vocals and sing and things like that, and they would participate in campus-wide events and perform and things like that. And so I used to join him for the actual performances that they had on campus. And honestly, like I really enjoyed this because it gave me an opportunity to meet his classmates. It's also a really good way for you to get to know, you know, your spouses or significant others, classmates, significant others, if that makes sense. So the other significant others in that campus, and it gives you a chance to meet that person, and maybe you can hit it off and bond with them. And honestly, like just a bonus tip, like if you are in a medical relationship, especially if your spouse is in like med school or something like that, it's a very unique type of relationship. And the best advice that I can give you is to find somebody else that's going through the same thing. Now, they don't actually have to be in the same medical school or the same program, but if you just find another individual whose significant other is also in medical school, maybe they're at the same level as you, or maybe they're like a level ahead of you, or you're a level ahead of them. It gives you someone to commiserate with, somebody who actually understands you, because not a lot of people will. Number 4, you want to join them for an activity that they enjoy that isn't necessarily on campus. So for number 3, it was going to the choir. Number 4, for me, my husband liked to work out. He was a gym rat. That was like his thing to do. And it was one of the things that really irritated me about him sometimes. It's like on the days that he didn't have such a heavy load as usual, he would come home, change, and then go to the gym for like an hour. And it used to irritate me until he was like, join me at the gym. You come with me. And honestly, like I ran a couple of half marathons, but I am not the type of person to just like put my sweats on and go work out, or at least that's not who I am post baby. You know, I prefer going for walks and stuff like that, but actually like breaking a sweat at the gym is not something that I enjoy. But I sucked it up for him. I saw it as kind of like a, if you can't beat them, join them kind of thing. And if going to the gym is something that helps him de-stress after a long day at work or a long day at school or at, you know, clinical or something like that, then if I want to spend time with him, I'm gonna have to do that thing that he enjoys. And it just became like this thing that he and I do together now. Like, as I said, I'm not a gym rat, so I'm not really good at like making up workouts or like planning a workout or knowing even what to do at the gym. And so we kind of like have this thing where we go together and we work out together. And initially, like it was a little awkward working out with him, but after a while you kind of like start enjoying each other's company, and it just becomes that thing that you do together. My tip number 5 will be to find something that both of you enjoy doing together that doesn't necessarily take so much time. So an example of this would be going for a run, or eating at a specific restaurant, or for us, because we were living in California during medical school, it was going to Disneyland. So we both had like a Disney pass. Our children were young enough to not have to pay to enter Disneyland, and so we would honestly, like, he would call me sometimes and he'd be like, hey, I'm getting off a little early, let's go to Disneyland. And literally that's what we would do. We would pack up the children, pack up like a meal if we were not feeling like eating out, and we would just go to Disneyland in the evening and spend like an evening there, ride 2 rides, eat dinner, watch the fireworks, and come back home. And so this was something that we tried to do at least once a month. And honestly, like, it was something that I really looked forward to. So number 6 is going or having a date night at home. A typical date, if you're gonna go out, requires a lot of like pre-planning and a lot of preparation, right? Like, you pick a place, it has to be between a certain time. Sometimes that is like an hour or 2 hours time being out of the house. You have to dress up, you have to do all of these things. It just becomes like this whole day thing. And so go ahead and just stay in. I used to do this, and I know, like, if my friends are watching or if my mom is watching, they're probably going to be laughing at me or something like that, but it's literally something that I had to do. Being a Muslim woman, as I said earlier, we don't have a lot of experience dating, and like, when you're finally married to the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, it's kind of like that novelty. Like, you want to date your husband, and now I'm married to this guy who has no time to go out or anything like that. It was a little saddening to me until, like, I fell upon this website on Pinterest where it talks about like how to date your spouse, and one of the ideas was to have a date night in. And so it's something that I did a few times. I would and we would plan it. It literally would be on the calendar, like date night. And even with the children, we would put the children to bed. I would cook a nice dinner for 2, and we'd eat it on the table with candles and everything. And sometimes we play music in the background. And if he had a little bit extra time, like, we would watch a movie or watch like an episode of Friends or something. And it's just like spending that one-on-one time with your spouse or your significant other. Like, even if it's 40 minutes, it doesn't matter. Like, that is like quality time that you're spending together. And I think that that's like the take-home message, is to spend quality time with each other. Tip number 7, go to the library or a coffee shop with your significant other. So they need to study, obviously. I've made that point very, very clear. They have a lot of information that they need to cover in the 4 years that they're in medical school, and they need to get that information in their brain. And the only way that they're going to do that is if they actually spend the time and they sit down and they study. So if your spouse, boyfriend, significant other, whatever, is the type to go ahead and study at a library or a coffee shop or something, join them. You don't have to be studying with them. Obviously, maybe you're not studying, but you can go to the library, you can go to a coffee shop, grab a cup of coffee, pick up a book, read that book while they're sitting across from you studying for their test. Also, like, if they're trying to like memorize information and things like that, you could be of service to them. I did this a lot. My husband would give me like a set of like, you know, topics or questions and things like that that he needed to cover or that he needed to know. He would give it to me on a piece of paper, and we would quiz each other, or I would quiz him. And I used it as like a way for me to gain some knowledge too as a nurse, you know, like learning something that a doctor is learning. And, you know, also like we would go back and forth, and sometimes if I didn't understand what he was talking about, it'd be like, hey, could you explain this to me? And it was like a win-win for me. I got to learn something, and he also got to like build on his foundation. And honestly, like a lot of times I knew things that he didn't know, and I was able to explain it to him. And so it was kind of like this win-win. And I know not everybody in a medical relationship is actually also a medical professional, and that's okay. Like, you can read questions off and the answers could be there, and you know, it could just be something that you two do together. And tip number 8, just be in their presence. It might sound like a little lame, honestly, like to just be in someone's presence. Maybe it was a little easier for me because we were like further into our relationship. We had been married for 3 years already before he decided to go into medical school, or before he got into medical school. And so just being with him was important to me. It didn't matter, like we didn't have to talk to each other or anything like that. And so sometimes he would have these major exams on Monday and I would be off on the weekend. And, you know, I mean, sometimes I'd go to my parents' house or I'd hang out with my friends on one of the weekend days, but on the other day I would stay home. And my mom and my friends would be like, well, you know, he's not even like gonna be able to talk to you. He's busy studying. Why don't you come hang out with us? But for me, it was important to be home because although he was studying in the bedroom office and the door was shut, you know, and we're not really communicating with each other or anything like that. It gave me an opportunity to actually take care of him. You know, I was able to make him dinner or make him lunch. I was able to make him tea or coffee or something during his break time. And on the off chance that he actually wanted to like just, you know, step away from the books for 10 minutes or something like that, he could join me on the couch and we could watch like a short TV show together, or, you know, just sit and talk to each other for 10 minutes or something. And it just gave us that time to like bond, even for 5 minutes, you know. That was just important to me. So my tip number 9 is something that I wish I implemented a lot earlier. Use your time effectively. And what I mean is, if your husband, spouse, boyfriend, significant other, whatever he is to you or whatever she is to you, says, you know, I have 2 hours spare, I want to spend some time with you, let's go hiking, let's, whatever it is that you enjoy doing, let's go to the mall, let's do something, right? This is not the day to pick fights. And we're all human, you know. Like I said, I wish I had utilized this tip a lot earlier. Like, sometimes I would use this like free time that we had together, and I would bring up things that like irritated me about my husband. Like, you know, the house is a mess. Why do you leave your jacket around? Why do you leave your socks around? You know, can't you help me clean up? And things like that. It's very easy to get stressed out when you're like basically the only one doing certain things. And, you know, yeah, you're human, but they're also not doing it on purpose. And honestly, like, I cannot stress enough how this is definitely not the time to bring up like petty little arguments or to fight about things. If your spouse or significant other has spent or has decided to, you know, set some time aside for you to spend quality time with you, utilize it for quality time. Do not utilize this time as time to like bicker and fight about anything like that. That's not to say that there is no time to like communicate with your medical spouse. No, there is time to communicate with your spouse, but it would be a time that you set aside to discuss your relationship or to discuss things in your relationship. And as like non-spontaneous as that sounds, unfortunately, it's what you're gonna have to do in order to make this relationship work successfully. You need to set aside that time, like, you know, whenever you're free, honey, like, I want us to like talk about something that's been bothering me. So you're gonna let them know that something's bothering you, but you're gonna put the ball in their court when they're available to sit down and chit chat with you. And preferably, this is not a time that is like the day before an exam or something like that. You have to be considerate of their time. Tip number 10, let your significant other spend time with their friends. And this is kind of like going back to the whole tip number 1 about not being greedy. Do not be greedy of their time. We know that they don't have a lot of time. You know, they're studying, they're busy, they're doing their thing. I've said it a million times. I don't know how many times I can say it. But just don't be greedy of their time. You cannot always expect them to only spend time with you. And this is also something that I wish that I had learned a lot earlier. You know, it's very easy to, you know, expect your medical spouse to spend all of this time with you because you don't have a lot of it. And so it's like, if you have $5 and there's like 30 people and you need to spend that $5 with, it's very hard to give it up because you're like, you know, well, at least I want $1. And so you're just gonna have to be okay with them not always spending time with you, because they want to see their friends too. They haven't seen their friends, just as like they haven't seen you very often. They also haven't seen their friends very often. And it's important when you are in a medical relationship to nurture the relationships that you have, because you never know when somebody in your like friend circle or somebody in your immediate circle is going to be of help or service to you. You know, when you are in a medical relationship, like honestly, like it takes a village, especially if you have children like I did. Like it seriously takes a village, and you can't just be that person that picks up the phone on a day that you need a friend and expect them to be there for you. No, you honestly need to nurture the relationships that you have, and, you know, develop relationships with people that understand you. And, you know, in order to do that, you have to be present. You can't just be like, you're my friend when I need you, but not when I don't need you. And so, you know, allow your spouse to reach out to their friends, allow your spouse to hang out with your friends. Allow your spouse to call his friends. Allow your spouse to just, you know, step out of the house sometimes. They don't always have to be there with you. And, you know, I mean, just think of it like as if it was you. If you were in a relationship with somebody and you were the one who was constantly like studying, constantly working and things like that, and then you had a free moment and you wanted to spend it with your friend, but they gave you like hell about it, like how would that make you feel? And so, you know, just be mindful of that. I think that's the end of it. I probably could go on and on and on about like different tips and tricks on how to maintain a relationship in a medical profession setting. It's not impossible, really, it's not. It really isn't impossible. It's just something like any kind of relationship, you know, it needs work. It needs to be nurtured. It needs to be taken care of well. And when done properly, honestly, you can have a successful marriage or a successful relationship with somebody who is in medical school. I hope these tips were helpful for you. If they were, go ahead and hit the like button. If you have any other suggestions that maybe I didn't particularly share in this video, go ahead and leave me a comment down below. If you like to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and share this with your friends, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.